The servants in the grand townhouses used to work down here in the basements, while above them, good breeding and solvency cruised from chamber to dusted chamber. Now, when the dusting was done, the workers retired at night to the attics under the roofs, so what you got was a kind of gentility sandwich with the bread of domestic labour shielding the cold roast turkey of the Victorian good life. The buildings were large because Victorian families were large. And also, of course, all those under housemaids and second footmen had to be accommodated somewhere. In its attempt to find an equivalent of the Georgian square, the Victorian age came up with the grandiloquence of a unit like this one at Lancaster Gate. And how Victorian that at the very centre of this complex there stood the symbol of the Church of England, a constant reminder that God was watching, and also, of course, very convenient for attending services with minimum wastage of time and travel. Be it never so humble, there's no place like home, especially if it's got 6 stories, 20 rooms and a porticoed entrance. Life in the square was all stuffed shirt and ptarmigan. And of course, horse. Victorian London was a horse town, not a one-horse town, but by 1881, 300,000 of them, or 1 to every 10 humans. Grooms and stable boys were as essential as butlers and gentlemen's gentlemen. The definitive Victorian street sound was the clopping hooves of those 300,000 horses. About 15,000 of these nags earn their keep by pulling a hansom cab. Every time Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson jumped inside one, it would have cost them 6p a mile, plus the tip, or the living margin, as it was laughingly called. What about the horse? What was he laughingly called? Well, he may have been named after the weather on the day of his arrival. This noble creature may have been given a name like Mud, Slush or Puddle, or perhaps an even more derisory name like Gladstone or Disraeli. But no matter what he was called, this creature would have been better treated than people were, and for the most Victorian of reasons. He was more valuable than people were. 221B Baker Street, driver, quick as you like. There was nothing new about steam engines. They'd been around for a long time. But what was relatively new was the idea that when you put that steam engine on wheels, its pulling power was equal to the combined power of 16 horses. From the moment of that realisation, Dobbin's days were numbered, and London was poised on the brink of massive change. All the Victorians travelled by train, even the eminent Victorians, even the most eminent one of all. That unamused defender of the faith, Mr. Disraeli's fairy queen, Victoria herself. 100 years ago, this was the fastest moving bungalow in the world. Naturally, with all mod cons. Silver hand basin, somewhere to put your nail brushes. Silk quilted walls. And notice here, over this royal seat of queens, no admonitions not to indulge while the train is standing at a station. All this is so Victorian that there's a temptation to use it as a symbol of the whole of British society at the time. For instance, the poor travelled third class and the rich travelled first class. But I wonder, as the Queen reclined in these cushions, occasionally ringing for John Brown, I wonder did it ever occur to her to look out the window as this carriage was chugging towards King's Cross and notice that the railways were carving up London. Perhaps it wouldn't have made any difference if she had noticed, because Those railway speculators were unstoppable, like a runaway train. Remember that great walled city that the Romans built? By 1900, the main outlines of modern London were fixed. The square mile of the old Roman city, housing 50,000 souls, had now swollen to 117 square miles, housing 6.5 million. Will it become the great dinosaur of urban man, a monster too cumbersome to survive? Why do I ask such a morbid question? Maybe it's because I'm a Londoner.